My name is Emma Reynolds. I am 32 years old and I live in a quiet suburban house in America. It happened right after dinner. First, my hands started shaking. Then, the room began to spin. I grabbed the table to steady myself. My husband looked at me with wide, worried eyes. He touched my forehead gently. "Hang in there, sweetheart," he said. "I'll take you to the hospital." I nodded, feeling grateful. I trusted him completely. I climbed into the passenger seat, closing my eyes against the dizziness. But a few minutes later, the car slowed down. The smooth hum of the highway tires stopped. Instead, I heard the loud crunch of gravel. I opened my eyes. We weren't at the hospital. We were on an old dirt road where the trees blocked out the moon. He stopped the car. The engine idled quietly. He didn't get out to help me. Instead, he leaned over, his face close to mine. His voice was no longer worried. It was cold and flat. He whispered, "I poisoned your food. You have 30 minutes. Get out." My name is Emma. I stood on the side of that dark road and watched his taillights fade away. He thought this was the end of my story. He was wrong. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Emma Reynolds. I am 32 years old. The car stopped. The tires crunched one last time on the loose stones and then went silent. The engine was still running. It hummed beneath the floorboards, vibrating against the soles of my shoes. It was a low, steady rhythm. It was the only sound in the world. My husband, Mark, put the car in park. He did not turn off the headlights. The beams cut through the darkness, illuminating the trunks of the pine trees in front of us. The trees looked pale and ghostly in the artificial light. Beyond the light, there was only blackness, deep, heavy forest blackness. He hit the button to unlock the doors. Click. The sound was loud. It echoed inside the small space of the sedan. In the past, that sound meant we had arrived somewhere safe. It meant we were home. It meant we were at a restaurant for date night. It meant we were visiting his parents. Tonight, it sounded like a gun being cocked. I looked at him. I turned my head slowly because my neck felt stiff. The poison, or the fear of the poison, was making my muscles lock up. I looked at his profile. He was staring straight ahead through the windshield. His hands were gripping the steering wheel at the 10 and 2 positions. His knuckles were white. The skin was pulled tight over the bone. He was wearing his blue work shirt, the one I had ironed for him that morning. I remembered standing in the laundry room, pressing the steam button, making sure the collar was crisp. I had done that for him. I had taken care of him. And now he was sitting there waiting for me to die. "Get out," he said. His voice was steady. It wasn't the voice of a monster in a movie. It wasn't a growl. It was his normal voice. It was the same voice he used to order coffee or ask for the check at dinner. That was what made it terrifying. To him, this was just a transaction. He was discarding something he no longer needed. I didn't move immediately. I couldn't. My brain was trying to process the command. Get out. It seemed impossible. We were miles from the main road. We were miles from civilization. "Mark," I whispered, my voice shook. "Please." He didn't look at me. He didn't blink. "You have 29 minutes left," he said. "Do you want to spend them arguing or do you want to try to find help? Get out." He leaned over and opened the passenger door. He pushed it open. The cold air rushed in. It was freezing. It was a damp, raw cold that smelled of wet earth and decaying leaves. It hit my face and stung my eyes. The warmth of the car, the warmth of our life together, was sucked out in a second. I unbuckled my seatbelt. My fingers were clumsy. They felt like they belonged to someone else. The metal tongue of the buckle slid out. I realized this was the last time I would ever be in this car where we had sung along to the radio, this car where we had argued about directions, this car where we had driven home from the hospital after I had a miscarriage, holding hands and crying. Now, he was kicking me out of it. I swung my legs out. I placed my feet on the ground. The gravel was uneven. I was wearing flat shoes, sensible shoes, but the rocks poked through the thin soles. I put my weight on my legs. They trembled. I had to grab the door frame to pull myself up. I stood up. The wind whipped my hair across my face. I pushed it back. I looked at him one last time. I wanted him to look at me. I wanted him to see what he was doing. I wanted him to see the woman he had promised to love and cherish. "Mark," I said again. He turned his head. He looked at me. His eyes were dead. There was no anger. There was no sadness. There was just nothing. He looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was a hitchhiker he had picked up and was now tired of. "Goodbye, Emma," he said. He reached out and pulled the door shut. Slam. The noise was final. It severed everything. He didn't wait. He didn't hesitate. As soon as the latch clicked, he shifted the car into drive. The brake lights flared bright red, illuminating the dust swirling around my legs. He pressed the gas. The car lurched forward. The tires spun for a second on the loose gravel, kicking up small stones that hit my shins. Then the tires found traction. I watched him drive away. I stood there, frozen. I watched the red taillights get smaller and smaller. They bobbed up and down as the car navigated the potholes. They looked like two red eyes moving away from me. I waited for him to stop. Part of me, the part that still loved him, the part that was stupid and hopeful, thought he would stop. I thought he would see me in the rearview mirror standing alone in the dark, and he would slam on the brakes. He would reverse. He would jump out and say he was sorry. He would say it was a sick joke. He would say he had lost his mind for a moment. But he didn't stop. The red lights turned a corner around a bend in the trees. The darkness swallowed them. Then, the sound of the engine faded. It got quieter and quieter. It became a hum, then a whisper, and then silence. He was gone. I was alone. I looked down at myself. I was standing on a dirt road in the middle of a forest. I had no phone. I had no purse. He had made me leave them in the car. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and the poison in my stomach. The shock began to wear off, and the reality set in. He had abandoned me. He hadn't just left me, he had discarded me. He had driven me out here like you drive an old dog out to the country to leave it behind. My knees gave out. I sank down onto the cold, hard ground. The rocks dug into my skin, but I didn't care. I felt heavy. My body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I wasn't crying yet. I was too stunned to cry. I was just breathing, in and out, sharp, shallow breaths. I stared at the spot where his car had been. The tire tracks were still fresh in the dirt. Proof that he had been here, proof that this had happened. The darkness felt like a physical weight. It pressed against my shoulders, it pressed against my chest. I was 32 years old, I was a wife. I was a daughter, I was a friend. And now I was nothing. I was a ghost standing on the side of a road, waiting to expire. The trees loomed over me. They were tall and menacing. The wind rustled their branches, and it sounded like they were whispering to each other. They were whispering about the woman who had been left behind. The woman who wasn't loved enough to be kept. I wrapped my arms around my chest. I tried to hold myself together. I felt like I was falling apart. I felt like if I let go, I would shatter into a million pieces and blow away in the wind. He was driving home now. He was probably turning on the radio. He was probably thinking about what he would say to the police. He was probably rehearsing his tears. I hated him. The hate came suddenly. It was hot and sharp. It burned through the cold. I hated him for leaving. I hated him for the poison. I hated him for the wasted years. But mostly, I hated him for the calmness. I hated him for the way he had looked at me, like I was nothing. I sat there in the dirt, abandoned and alone, and I let the hate keep me warm. The silence was the worst part. You don't realize how loud the world is until you are completely alone in it. There were no cars, no streetlights buzzing, no distant sirens, no voices, just the wind and the trees and the beating of my own heart. Thump thump. Thump thump, it was fast, it was racing. I remembered what he said. You have 30 minutes. I looked at my wrist. I wasn't wearing a watch. I didn't know what time it was. I didn't know how much time had passed since we left the house. 10 minutes. 15, was I dying right now? I tried to assess my body. I closed my eyes and focused inward. My stomach felt tight. Was that the poison, or was it fear? My hands were shaking. Was that a symptom, or was it the cold? My head felt light. Was my brain shutting down, or was I hyperventilating? I didn't know. I panicked. I stood up. I started to walk. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to move. If I moved, I was alive. If I stopped, I might die. I stumbled down the road in the direction the car had gone. It was pitch black. I couldn't see the ground. I kicked a rock and nearly fell. I caught myself. Help, I screamed. The sound tore out of my throat. It was raw and ugly. Somebody help me, my voice echoed off the trees. It bounced back to me, mocking me. Help me, help me. No one answered. Of course no one answered. There was no one here. That was why he chose this place. I screamed again and again. I screamed until my throat hurt. I screamed until I was coughing. Then I stopped. I stood in the middle of the road, panting. My breath made white clouds in the freezing air. Screaming was useless. Screaming was a waste of energy. And if I only had a few minutes left, I couldn't waste energy. I needed to think. I forced myself to stop moving. I forced myself to breathe through my nose. 30 minutes. He said he poisoned the food. We had eaten dinner at 7 p.m. We left the house at 7:30 p.m. The drive took maybe 20 minutes. That meant the 30 minutes were almost up. If he was telling the truth, I should be in agony. I should be foaming at the mouth. I should be convulsing. But I wasn't. I felt sick, yes. I felt weak, yes. But I was standing, I was thinking. My vision was clear, even in the dark. I walked over to a large fallen log on the side of the road and sat down. The wood was damp and rot soft. I started counting. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. I needed to measure time. If I could count to 60, that was a minute. If I could do that 10 times, that was 10 minutes. 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi. I stared into the dark woods. I thought this was the end. I truly did. I thought about my mother. I wondered if she would miss me. I thought about my sister. I wondered if she would fight for me. 10 Mississippi. I thought about my garden. I had planted tulips last week. They wouldn't bloom until spring. I wouldn't see them. The thought made me sob, just one sob. A short, sharp sound. 20 Mississippi. Why did he do this? Why poison me? Why not just divorce me? Because divorce is messy. Divorce is expensive. Divorce takes time. Widowhood is simple. Widowhood gets you sympathy. Widowhood gets you the life insurance money without a fight. He wanted to erase me. He didn't want an ex-wife. He wanted a memory. 40 Mississippi. I kept counting. I rocked back and forth on the log. The cold was seeping through my clothes. My teeth started to chatter. 50 Mississippi. 60, 1 minute. I was still alive. I started again. 1 Mississippi. I sat there for what felt like hours. I counted and counted. I reached 10 minutes. Then 20, nothing happened. My heart rate slowed down. The dizziness faded. The nausea settled. I waited for the pain. I waited for the darkness to close in. But it didn't come. Slowly, very slowly, a realization began to dawn on me. It started as a tiny spark in the back of my mind. He had said, "I poisoned your food." But I had cooked the food. I had made the pasta. I had made the sauce. I had served the plates. He had poured the wine. But I didn't drink the wine. I had a headache earlier that day, so I drank water. He knew I drank water. He had watched me eat. If he had poisoned the food, he would have had to do it while I was cooking. But I was in the kitchen the whole time. Unless there was no poison, I stopped counting. I sat perfectly still. The wind blew through the trees. Whoosh. What if there was no poison? What if the poison was a lie? I thought about his face in the car. He was calm. He was smug. If he wanted to kill me, why tell me? Why give me a warning? Why drop me off on a road? Why not just let me die in my sleep at home? It would be easier to explain. She died in her sleep. Dropping me off in the woods was risky, unless he didn't care if I died, or unless he wanted me to believe I was dying. He wanted me to panic. He wanted me to run through the woods, terrified, screaming until I got lost. He wanted me to die of exposure, or he wanted me to fall and break my neck, or he simply wanted to torture me. He wanted the last 30 minutes of my life to be pure hell. But as the minutes ticked by, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, the truth became clearer. I wasn't dying. I stood up. My legs were stiff, but they were strong. I took a deep breath. The air was crisp. It filled my lungs. I wasn't dying. He had lied. He had used my fear as a weapon. He had used my trust to break me. He thought I would collapse. He thought I would curl up in a ball and give up. He thought this was the ending. He thought the screen would fade to black and the credits would roll. But I was still here. I looked down at my hands. They had stopped shaking. I made a fist. I squeezed tight. I felt the strength in my fingers. I wasn't a ghost. I was a woman, and I was alive. A strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't relief. It was something harder. It was something colder. Betrayal doesn't explode like a bomb. It hums. It's a low frequency that vibrates in your bones. It changes the structure of who you are. I looked down the dark road. I didn't know where it led, but I knew I had to walk it. I wasn't going to die here. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. He had driven away thinking he was free. He thought he had left a corpse behind. He was wrong. He had left a witness. I started to walk. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I just walked. One foot in front of the other. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The sound of my footsteps was the only sound in the night. It was the sound of survival. I was walking out of the woods. I was walking back to the world. And when I got there, I was going to burn his world to the ground. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of the hunt. Sitting on that cold, damp log on the side of the dirt road, I stopped shivering for a moment. My mind traveled away from the darkness. It traveled back in time. It went back 12 years to a bright, sunny afternoon in October. I need to tell you about the beginning. You have to understand the beginning to understand why the end shattered me. If he had been a bad man when I met him, this would be a different story. If he had been cruel, or loud, or selfish, I would have protected myself. I would have kept my walls up, but he wasn't. He was perfect. And that was the trap. We met in a coffee shop near the university campus. It is a cliché, I know. It sounds like a movie, but clichés happen for a reason. I was sitting by the window. I was 20 years old. I was stressed out about a final exam in history. I had books spread all over the small round table. My hair was a mess. I was tired. I reached for a sugar packet to put in my black coffee and my hand slipped. The packet tore open. Sugar exploded everywhere. It went all over my notes. It went into my lap. It spilled onto the floor. I froze. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. It was a small thing, but I was so on edge that it felt like a disaster. I started frantically brushing the sugar off my textbook, making it worse. "Hey," a voice said. "Don't worry. I've got it." I looked up. He was standing there with a handful of napkins. He was wearing a gray sweater that looked soft. He had brown hair that was slightly messy and kind, warm brown eyes. He didn't look annoyed. He didn't look like he was laughing at me. He looked concerned. He knelt down and started wiping the sugar off the floor. Then he carefully wiped the table, lifting my books one by one. "I'm so clumsy," I said. My face was burning hot. "No, you're not," he said. He smiled. His eyes crinkled at the corners. "You're just studying hard. I can see the smoke coming out of your ears." I laughed. It was the first time I had laughed in a week. "I'm Mark," he said. "I'm Emma," I said. He insisted on buying me a fresh coffee. We sat and talked for 2 hours. I forgot about my exam. I forgot about the sugar. He was gentle. That is the word I keep coming back to, gentle. I grew up in a house that wasn't gentle. My family was loud. My parents argued. My siblings were competitive. I was used to people talking over me. I was used to being ignored unless I was shouting. Mark was different. He was quiet. He listened. When I spoke, he looked right at me. He didn't check his watch. He didn't look around the room to see if someone more interesting was walking in. He treated my words like they were important. He was careful with everything. He held his coffee cup with 2 hands. He moved his chair without scraping the floor. He seemed afraid of breaking things. I loved that softness. I fell into it. It felt like sinking into a warm bath after being cold for a long time. We started dating. He was the perfect boyfriend. He opened doors for me. He walked on the outside of the sidewalk, close to the traffic to protect me. When I was sick with the flu, he came over and made me soup from scratch. He sat by my bed and read to me until I fell asleep. "I'll always take care of you, Emma," he told me one night. We were lying on the grass in the park, looking at the stars. "You don't have to be strong all the time. I've got you." I believed him. I wanted to believe him. We built a life on that promise. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony. It was quiet and beautiful. I remember looking at him at the altar. He was crying. He wiped his eyes and squeezed my hands. I thought those were tears of joy. I thought he was overwhelmed by how much he loved me. Now, sitting in the dark woods, I wonder what those tears really were. Were they guilt? Or was he just a very good actor? We bought a house. It was a fixer-upper. We spent our weekends painting walls and sanding floors. We built bookshelves together. We argued about what color to paint the kitchen. I wanted yellow, he wanted blue. We compromised on a soft green. We developed habits. We had rituals. Friday night was pizza night. We would order from the same place, get a pepperoni pizza, and watch a movie. Sunday morning was for coffee and silence. We would sit in the living room, reading, not speaking, just enjoying each other's presence. Those silences felt earned. They felt safe. You can only be silent with someone you trust completely. We had inside jokes. One look across a crowded room, and we would both start laughing because we knew what the other person was thinking. We were a team. We were Mark and Emma. It was a single unit. I trusted him with everything. I trusted him with my money. We combined our bank accounts immediately. "What's mine is yours," he said. I trusted him with my body. I trusted him with my secrets. I told him about my fears of abandonment. I told him how my father used to leave for days without calling. I told him how much that scared me. He held me tight. "I'm not him," he whispered into my hair. "I'm never going anywhere." That is what made the betrayal deadly. If he had hit me, I would have known he was dangerous. If he had yelled at me, I would have been on guard. But he never did. He killed me with kindness. He lulled me to sleep with his gentleness so that I wouldn't see the knife in his hand. The betrayal wasn't just that he left me on a road. It wasn't just that he tried to kill me. The betrayal was the 12 years. He had stayed. He had come home every single night. He had kissed me. He had made love to me. He had eaten the meals I cooked. He had celebrated my birthdays. But at some point, he had stopped being my husband and started being my enemy. When did it happen? Did he wake up one day and decide he hated me? Or was it always there? Was the gentleness a lie from the very first day in the coffee shop? I thought about the house we built, the garden I planted, the life we made. It was all a lie. He hadn't just left me. He had stolen my past. He had taken my memories and poisoned them. Every happy memory I had was now tainted. Every time he smiled, was he secretly laughing at me? Every time he said, "I love you," was he thinking about how to get rid of me? The pain of that thought was worse than the cold. It was a physical ache in my chest. It felt like my heart was breaking into shards of glass. I realized something terrifying as I sat there. He didn't hate me. Hate is a strong emotion. Hate is passionate. He was indifferent. To him, I wasn't a person. I was an object. I was an appliance that had stopped working. I was a toaster that burned the toast, so he was throwing me out to get a new one. He had used my love against me. He knew I trusted him. He knew I wouldn't question him. He knew I would get into the car. He knew I would believe him when he said he was taking me to the hospital. He had weaponized my love. He had built a trap out of hugs and kisses and hang in there, sweetheart. And I had walked right into it, smiling. I looked at my wedding ring. I was still wearing it. It was a simple gold band with a small diamond. He had picked it out. He said it was classic and elegant, just like you. I tried to pull it off. My fingers were swollen from the cold and the stress. It wouldn't budge, it was stuck. I twisted it and pulled. It hurt, but I didn't care. I wanted it off. I wanted to scrub the mark of him off my skin. Finally, with a hard yank, it slid over my knuckle. I held it in my hand. It felt light. It was just a piece of metal. It meant nothing. I threw it. I threw it as hard as I could into the darkness of the trees. I didn't hear it land. It just vanished. "I hate you," I whispered. But I wasn't talking to the man who drove away. I was talking to the man in the coffee shop. I was talking to the memory of the man I loved. He was dead. He never existed. And now I had to survive the man who took his place. The end didn't happen all at once. It wasn't an explosion. It was an erosion. Sitting in the dark, with my adrenaline fading and my mind sharpening, I started to see the signs I had missed. I started to see the pattern. If you look at a building that collapses, you can always find the cracks in the foundation afterward. They were there for years. People just walked past them. They painted over them. They ignored them. I had painted over the cracks in my marriage for a long time. The changes started about a year ago. They were so subtle that I convinced myself I was imagining them. It started with the phone. Mark used to be careless with his phone. He would leave it on the kitchen counter, on the coffee table, in the bathroom. He never had a passcode on it. "I have nothing to hide," he used to say. Then one day that changed. I walked into the living room. He was sitting on the sofa typing something. When he saw me, his shoulders tensed up. He quickly hit the lock button and placed the phone face down on the cushion next to him. "Hey," he said. His voice was a little too loud, a little too cheerful. "Hey," I said. "Who are you talking to?" "No one," he said. "Just work stuff, boring emails, you know how it is." "Okay," I said. I sat down next to him. He didn't move the phone. He kept his hand near it, guarding it. A few days later, I tried to use his phone to check the weather because mine was charging in the other room. I swiped the screen. Enter passcode. I paused. He had never had a passcode. I tried 000. Incorrect. I tried 1 2 3 4. Incorrect. "Mark," I called out. "What's your code? I just need to check the weather." He came into the room quickly. He took the phone out of my hand. He wasn't aggressive, but he was firm. "I had to put a lock on it," he said smoothly. "Company policy, new security rules at the office." "Sorry." He unlocked it himself, checked the weather, and told me it was going to rain. He didn't hand the phone back. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He worked in finance. Security made sense. Then came the appearance changes. Mark had always been a jeans and t-shirt guy. He didn't care about fashion. He didn't care about grooming. Suddenly, he started buying new clothes, expensive shirts, tailored slacks. "I need to look sharper for the clients," he said. "I'm up for a promotion." Then the cologne. I walked into the bathroom one morning and the air was thick with a scent I didn't recognize. It was musky, spicy, and expensive. It wasn't the soap he usually used. I found a small black bottle in the medicine cabinet. "Since when do you wear cologne?" I asked him at breakfast. He shrugged, not looking up from his eggs. "Just trying something new. One of the guys at work recommended it." "Do you like it?" "It's strong," I said. "I'll use less next time," he said. He started going to the gym. He had never liked the gym. Now he was going 4 times a week. He was losing weight. He was getting fit. I told myself, he's trying to be healthy. That's good. I should support him. But he wasn't doing it for me. He wasn't trying to look good for his wife. He was preening. He was getting ready for the market. Then came the practiced disrespect. This was the hardest part to admit to myself. He started treating me differently in public. It wasn't abuse. He didn't call me names. It was softer than that. It was condescending. We were at dinner with his parents. I was telling a funny story about our recent vacation to the beach. "And then we got lost looking for this seafood place," I said, laughing. "We drove in circles for 20 minutes. Mark cut in. He put his hand on my arm. It looked affectionate, but his grip was tight. "Actually, Emma," he said, smiling at his mother, "we weren't lost. You just read the map wrong. I knew where we were the whole time." His mother laughed. "Oh, Emma. You and directions." I felt my face get hot. I thought the map was confusing." "It was a straight line, honey," Mark said. He patted my hand. "It's okay. Not everyone has a sense of direction." He made me feel small. He made me feel stupid. And he did it with a smile. It happened again at the grocery store. I reached for a box of cereal. "Not that one," he said, taking it from me and putting it back on the shelf. "Too much sugar. We're eating better now, remember?" He spoke to me like I was a child, like I couldn't be trusted to feed myself. He was rewriting me. In his mind, and in the minds of everyone around us, he was turning me into the incompetent, silly wife. He was the patient, long-suffering husband. I see now that he was setting the stage. He was building the narrative, poor Mark. His wife is so unstable, she's so scattered. Then came the absence. "I have to work late. I have a client dinner. I have to go to Chicago for a conference." He was never home, and when he was home, he wasn't really there. He was distracted. He was always on his phone. If I tried to talk to him, he would sigh. "I'm tired, Emma," he would say. "Can we talk about this later?" Later never came. I became lonely in my own house. I would cook dinner for 2 and eat alone. I would go to bed alone. I would wake up and he would already be gone. I tried to bridge the gap. I planned date nights. He canceled them. I tried to initiate intimacy. He pushed me away. "I have a headache," he said. The classic line. I thought it was a phase. I thought he was stressed. I read articles online about how to support a busy spouse. I tried harder. But the defining moment, the moment the crack finally split the wall open, happened on a Sunday morning. It was 3 months ago. Mark was in the shower. I was making the bed. His tablet was sitting on the nightstand. He usually kept it locked, but he must have forgotten. It buzzed. A soft, electronic vibration against the wood. I looked over. I wasn't trying to snoop. It was just instinct. The screen lit up. A notification banner appeared at the top. It was a text message. The sender wasn't a name. It was just a letter. J. The message was short. "I miss you. Last night was amazing." The world stopped spinning. I stared at those words. They burned into my retinas. Last night was amazing. Last night, Mark had told me he was at a strategy meeting that ran late. He had come home at midnight, smelling of mints and that new cologne. He had slipped into bed without kissing me. My heart hammered in my chest. I felt like I was going to throw up. I reached for the tablet. My hand was shaking so bad I could barely hold it. I wanted to open it. I wanted to read everything. I wanted to know who Jay was. But then, the water in the bathroom turned off. I heard the shower door open. I heard him stepping out. Panic seized me, pure, cold fear. If I confronted him now, everything would blow up. The life I knew would be over. I wasn't ready. I was scared. I was weak. I put the tablet back exactly where it was. I turned away and started fluffing a pillow, pretending to be busy. Mark walked into the bedroom with a towel around his waist. He looked at me. Then his eyes darted to the tablet. He walked over to the nightstand, casual but quick. He picked up the tablet. He checked the screen. He saw the notification. I watched him in the reflection of the mirror. I saw his face. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed. He swiped the message away and cleared the screen. Then he looked at me. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," I said. My voice sounded normal. It was a miracle. I was screaming on the inside, but my voice was steady. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "Yes," I lied. "Fine," he smiled. It was that same empty, plastic smile. He didn't know I had seen it. Or maybe he didn't care. That was the moment the marriage ended. It didn't end on the dirt road. It ended in that bedroom, with the smell of his cologne and the lie hanging in the air. I knew, and I did nothing. I convinced myself I could fix it, or I convinced myself I was wrong. Maybe Jay was a client. Maybe amazing meant the business deal. I lied to myself because the truth was too painful to bear. I swallowed the poison of that text message. I let it sit in my stomach for 3 months. And then, tonight, he tried to feed me real poison. Sitting on the log, I realized that my silence had been his permission. By not confronting him, I had let him think he was smarter than me. I had let him think he could get away with anything. I had played the role of the dumb, trusting wife perfectly. But the play was over. The curtain had fallen. I stood up from the log. My legs were strong again. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I knew his patterns. I knew his schedule. I knew his passwords. I had watched him type them in over his shoulder a dozen times since that day, memorizing the sequence. He thought I was dead. He thought he had erased me. But he had forgotten one thing. He had forgotten that I was the one who managed the details. I was the one who paid the bills. I was the one who organized the files. I was the one who knew where the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. He had left me with nothing but my knowledge, and that was going to be enough. I looked down the dark tunnel of the road. I took a step, then another. I was going back. Not to him, but to the life he tried to steal. I was going to take it back, piece by piece. He had given me 30 minutes to die. I was going to take the rest of my life to make him pay. I didn't confront him that morning in the bedroom. I didn't scream about the text message from Jay. I didn't throw the tablet at the wall. Instead, I swallowed the scream. I let it sit in my stomach like a cold stone. That Sunday changed me. Before that day I was a wife, I was a partner, I was a woman in love. After that day I became something else. I became a witness. I stopped looking at Mark as my husband. I started looking at him as a subject of study. I became an observer of my own life. It was a strange, numb feeling. It felt like I was floating on the ceiling, looking down at a woman named Emma who was pretending everything was fine. I decided I needed proof. A feeling wasn't enough. A glimpse of a text message wasn't enough. I needed to know the whole picture. I needed to know exactly what I was up against. The opportunity came 3 nights later. Mark came home late again. He said he had a team dinner. He smelled of steak and red wine. He was in a good mood. He kissed me on the forehead, took a shower, and fell asleep almost immediately. I lay in the dark next to him. I listened to his breathing. It was slow and rhythmic. It was the sound of a man with a clear conscience or no conscience at all. I waited until 2 a.m. I sat up slowly. The mattress creaked. I froze. He didn't move. I slipped out of bed. My bare feet touched the cold hardwood floor. I crept over to his side of the bed where his phone was charging on the nightstand. My heart was hammering against my ribs. It was so loud I was sure he could hear it. Thump thump, thump thump. I picked up the phone. It was warm. I went into the bathroom and closed the door. I sat on the edge of the tub and turned on the screen. The light was blinding in the dark room. Enter passcode. I took a breath. I had watched him type it in over his shoulder a dozen times in the last few days. I had memorized the pattern of his thumb. I typed it in. 8-2-4-6. The phone unlocked. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I felt like a criminal. I felt dirty. But I had to know. I opened his messages. There it was, a thread with Jay. I opened it. I scrolled back. I read for an hour. I read things that made my skin crawl. I read things that broke my heart. Jay was Julia. She was a new associate at his firm. She was 24. I read about their lunches. I read about their late nights at the office. I read about the hotel in Chicago. But the worst part wasn't the sex. The worst part was how he talked about me. She's so boring, he wrote. She just wants to talk about the garden. I feel trapped, he wrote. I need to find a way out. Don't worry, baby, I'm handling it. It won't be long now. I sat in the bathroom, shivering on the cold tile, reading my own obituary. He wasn't just cheating. He was done. He was planning an exit. And then I found something that made my blood run cold. It was a search history. I checked his browser. He had been careful to delete most things, but he had missed a few tabs from earlier that day. Life insurance payout terms for spouses. Untraceable poisons. Symptoms of heart failure. I stared at the small screen. The words swam before my eyes. He wasn't just planning to leave. He was planning to get paid. We had a large life insurance policy. We had taken it out when we bought the house. If I died, he would get $2 million. The house would be paid off. He would be free, he would be rich, he would have Julia. I put the phone down on the bath mat. I felt like I was going to vomit. This wasn't just a betrayal of the heart. This was a threat to my life. I sat there for a long time. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked pale. My eyes were wide and terrified. I looked like a victim. No, I whispered to my reflection. I washed my face with cold water. I took deep breaths until the shaking stopped. I carefully wiped the phone screen with a towel to remove my fingerprints. I checked the apps I had opened and closed them, so it looked exactly as he had left it. I went back into the bedroom. I placed the phone back on the charger. I climbed back into bed next to the man who was researching how to kill me. He shifted in his sleep. He threw an arm over me. His arm was heavy. It felt like a chain. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, making a plan. I had to be smarter than him. I had to be quieter than him. The next morning, I started my performance. When Mark woke up, I was in the kitchen making pancakes. I was humming. "Good morning," I said brightly when he walked in. He looked surprised. "You're cheerful today." "I just slept really well," I lied. "Here, have some coffee." I poured him a cup. I watched him drink it. I watched his throat move as he swallowed. For the next 2 months, I played the role of the oblivious wife perfectly. I didn't ask where he was going. I didn't ask who was texting him. I smiled when he came home late. I cooked his favorite meals. I asked him about his day and listened to his lies without blinking. "The project is really intense right now," he would say. "I'm sorry I'm so busy." "I understand," I would say. "You're working so hard for us." I emphasized the word us. I wanted him to feel safe. I wanted him to think I was stupid. I learned his schedule better than he knew it himself. I knew that on Tuesdays and Thursdays he was with Julia. I knew that on Monday mornings he had a team meeting. I started tracking everything. I bought a small notebook. I hid it in the gardening shed, inside a bag of potting soil. He would never look there. He hated gardening. In that notebook I wrote down every lie. October 12, said he was at client dinner. Credit card statement shows charge at the Grand Hotel bar at 11 p.m. October 14, said he was working late. GPS on the car shows he was parked at an apartment complex on 4th Street. I became a spy in my own house. It was exhausting. It drained me. Every time I smiled at him, it took a piece of my soul. Every time I kissed him goodbye, I felt like I was kissing a snake. But I had to do it. I needed him to feel secure. I needed him to think his plan was working. If he thought I was suspicious, he might rush. He might do something violent. He might push me down the stairs. I needed him to stick to his quiet plan. The poison plan. Because poison takes preparation. And preparation gave me time. One evening we were sitting at dinner. He was texting under the table. I knew he was texting Julia. He looked up and saw me watching him. "What?" he asked, defensive. I smiled. It was a soft, gentle smile. The smile of the woman he fell in love with. "Nothing," I said. "I was just thinking about how lucky we are to have this house, to have each other." He relaxed. He actually smiled back. "Yeah," he said. "We are lucky." In that moment, I saw the relief in his eyes. He thought he had me fooled. He thought I was a sheep waiting for the slaughter. He didn't see the wolf sitting across the table. He didn't know that I had already been to a lawyer. He didn't know that I had already moved the money. He didn't know that I was waiting for him to make his move so I could make mine. I passed him the salt. "Eat up," I said. I watched him eat. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was his witness. And I was building the case that would destroy him. People think revenge is loud. They think it involves screaming matches, slashed tires, and clothes thrown out on the front lawn. They think it's a moment of passion where you lose control. That is amateur revenge. Real revenge is quiet. Real revenge is patient. Real revenge is legal. After I found the search history on his phone, the searches about poison and life insurance, I knew I didn't have much time. But I also knew I couldn't just run to the police. Police need evidence. My husband looked up poison on Google, might get him a visit, but it wouldn't put him in jail. And if they visited him and didn't arrest him, he would know I was onto him. He would just change his method. He would become more careful or more violent. I needed to catch him in the act. I needed him to try. But before that, I needed to protect myself. My first step was the lawyer. I took a day off work. I told Mark I was going to visit my sister in the next town over. I actually drove 2 hours in the opposite direction, to a city where we knew no one. I found a lawyer named Sarah. She was older, sharp, and had eyes that had seen everything. I sat in her office and told her the truth. I told her about the texts. I told her about the search history. I told her I was afraid for my life. She listened without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow pad. "You need to leave," she said. "Now, tonight, go to a hotel. Go to your parents." "I can't," I said. "If I leave, he wins. He keeps the house. He keeps the money, and he gets away with planning my murder. He'll just find someone else to hurt." "Emma," she said. "This is dangerous." "I know," I said. "But I have a plan. I just need you to handle the legal side. I need to make sure that if anything happens to me, he gets nothing. And I need to make sure that when I take him down, he stays down." We spent the next 3 hours going over finances. Mark thought he was smart about money, but he was lazy. He let me handle the bills. He let me handle the passwords to the bank accounts. Under the guise of future planning, I had started moving things around weeks ago. I told Mark, "I'm worried about the economy. I think we should move some savings into a more secure bond." He waved his hand. "Whatever you think is best, honey, you're good at that stuff." He signed the papers without reading them. I didn't move the money to a bond. I moved it to a separate account in my name only. I moved half our savings. I left enough in the joint account so he wouldn't notice immediately, but I secured my share. I also updated my will. I sat in Sarah's office and signed a document that stated, clearly and boldly, that in the event of my death, Mark was to receive nothing. No house, no insurance, no savings. Everything was to go to my sister. And we drafted a sworn affidavit, a statement of facts. In it, I detailed everything. The texts I had seen, the search history, the dates, the times. I wrote down my fear that my husband was planning to poison me. If I die under suspicious circumstances, the document read, "Investigate Mark Reynolds." We notarized it. Sarah locked the original in her safe. "This is your insurance policy," she said. Walking out of that office, I felt lighter. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a woman with a legal team. The next step was the documentation. I needed hard copies. Digital evidence can be deleted. Phones can be wiped. I bought a USB drive. One day, while Mark was in the shower, I plugged it into his laptop. I was terrified he would come out. My eyes were glued to the progress bar on the screen. Copying. 45%, 60%, come on, come on. I heard the water turn off. 80%, I heard the shower door open. 95%, "Emma," he called out. "Have you seen my blue towel?" 100%, complete. I yanked the drive out. I shoved it into my pocket. "It's in the dryer," I yelled back. "I'll get it." My heart was racing, but I had it. I had his emails. I had his chat logs. I had his bank statements showing the hotel charges. I printed everything. I went to the library to do it, so there would be no record on our home printer. I made a binder, a thick black binder. I put everything in it, the photos of the texts, the printed emails, the bank statements, the affidavit. I hid the binder in the trunk of my car, under the spare tire. It was my break-in-case-of-emergency kit. The final step was the hardest. It was the emotional preparation. I had to prepare myself to be poisoned. I knew he was going to do it. The search history was specific. He was looking up ricinus communis, castor beans, ricin, but ricin is hard to make at home. He was also looking up digitalis, foxglove. It causes heart failure. It mimics a heart attack. I watched the garden. We didn't have foxglove, but his mother did. 2 weeks ago, we visited his parents. I saw him in the garden. He was weeding near the foxgloves. I saw him put something in his pocket. I knew then that the timeline was moving up. I went to a different doctor in the next town. I told him I was having anxiety. I got a full blood panel done. I wanted a baseline. I wanted proof that I was healthy, that my heart was strong, that I didn't have a pre-existing condition. I got the results. Patient is in excellent health. I put those results in the binder too. I was building a fortress of facts. When the police eventually looked at this case, they wouldn't see a tragic accident. They would see a healthy 32-year-old woman with a documented history of her husband's betrayal. I was ready. But being ready didn't make it less scary. Every time I ate dinner, I wondered, is this it? Every time he poured me a drink, I watched his hands. Did he slip something in? I started taking precautions. I drank only from water bottles I opened myself. When I cooked, I tasted everything constantly while it was in the pan, so if he added something later, it would be only on my plate. I switched plates when he wasn't looking. I would pretend to drop a fork, and when he looked down, I would rotate the dishes. It was a game of Russian roulette played at the dinner table. And then tonight came. I knew tonight was the night. How did I know? Because he was too nice. He came home early. He had flowers. He had a bottle of expensive wine. I want to cook for you tonight, he said. You've been working so hard. Let me pamper you. His eyes were bright. Too bright. He was buzzing with adrenaline. That sounds lovely, I said. I looked at the flowers. Lilies, my favorite, or they used to be, now they looked like funeral flowers. I'll make pasta, he said. Your favorite. Okay, I said. I'll go change. I walked into the bedroom. I closed the door. I went to my closet. I didn't put on comfortable clothes. I put on sturdy shoes. I put on a warm cardigan. I put my ID in my pocket. I texted my sister. It's happening tonight. Call the police if I don't text you by 9 p.m. Send them to the location I shared. I had shared my live location with her 3 days ago. I took a deep breath. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. You can do this, I said. You are not the victim, you are the bait. I walked out to the kitchen. Mark was at the stove. He was stirring the sauce. His back was to me. I saw his hand move. I saw him drop something into the pan, a powder. He stirred it in quickly. He turned around and saw me. He smiled. Almost ready, he said. It smells delicious. It sure does, I said. I sat down at the table. My hands were in my lap, clenched into fists. The preparation was over. The trap was set. Now, all I had to do was survive the meal. The kitchen smelled of garlic and tomatoes. It was a smell I used to love. It meant comfort. It meant family. Now it smelled like a crime scene. Mark was standing by the stove. He was stirring the sauce with a wooden spoon. He looked relaxed. He was humming a little tune. It was a song we used to dance to at weddings. The fact that he could hum it while preparing to kill me made my stomach turn. I sat at the dining table. My hands were in my lap, gripping the fabric of my skirt. I was checking my pockets mentally. Right pocket, the small burner phone I bought with cash 3 days ago. Left pocket, a small audio recorder already turned on. I had taped the recorder's light with black electrical tape so it wouldn't show through the fabric. Almost done, Mark said. He turned to me and smiled. I made it spicy, just the way you like it. Thank you, I said. I'm starving. I wasn't starving. I was terrified, but I had to play the part. I had to be the unsuspecting victim. He turned his back to me to plate the food. I watched him in the reflection of the microwave door. It was blurry, but I saw the motion. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small packet. He sprinkled it over one of the plates. He stirred it in quickly with a fork, burying the white powder under the red sauce. My heart hammered against my ribs. Seeing it happen was different than suspecting it. It was real. He was actually doing it. He picked up the 2 plates. He turned around. Here we go, he said. He walked to the table. He placed the poison plate in front of me. He placed the safe plate in front of himself. Bon appetit, he said. He sat down. He picked up his fork. He looked at me, waiting. He wanted to see me take the first bite. He wanted to see the seal break on his plan. I picked up my fork. My hand trembled. I didn't have to fake the trembling. Mark, I said, could you get me some water? I forgot to pour a glass. He hesitated. He looked at the food, then at me. He didn't want to leave the table. He wanted to watch. Sure, babe, he said finally. I'll get it. He stood up and walked to the fridge. His back was to me. This was it. I didn't switch the plates. That's what they do in movies. In real life, plates are heavy and ceramic and they clatter. If I moved them, he might hear. Instead, I did something I had prepared for. Days ago, I had found his stash. I found the small bag of white powder hidden in his toolbox in the garage. I had taken a sample and brought it to a pharmacist friend in the next city. It was digitalis. Foxglove, deadly in high doses. I didn't flush it. If I flushed it, he would know I knew. Instead, I had emptied the bag. I replaced the digitalis with a mixture of crushed aspirin and sugar. It looked exactly the same. So, as I sat there looking at the plate of pasta, I knew the white powder in the sauce wasn't poison. It was just a headache cure mixed with sugar, but he didn't know that. He thought he was feeding me death. He came back with the water. He set it down. Thanks, I said. I took a bite of the pasta. He watched me chew. His eyes were dark and focused. It was the look of a predator watching a mouse. How is it? He asked. It's good, I said. A little sweet maybe. I added a pinch of sugar, he said quickly, to cut the acidity. I ate half the plate. Every bite felt like ash in my mouth. I was eating with a man who wanted me dead. I was looking at his hands, hands that I used to hold, and realizing they had just tried to end my life. I waited 10 minutes. Then I started the performance. I dropped my fork. It clattered loudly on the china. "Emma," he asked. "What's wrong?" I put a hand to my forehead. I blinked rapidly. "I don't know," I said. My voice was breathless. "I feel dizzy." I grabbed the edge of the table. I swayed in my chair. Mark stood up. He didn't look scared. He looked excited. He tried to hide it, but I saw it. His pupils were dilated. "Whoa, okay," he said. "Take deep breaths." "My heart," I said. I pressed my hand to my chest. "It's beating so fast." "You look pale," he said. "Maybe it's food poisoning or an allergic reaction." He was setting the narrative already. I think I need a doctor," I whispered. I slumped forward, resting my head on the table. He came over to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. It wasn't a comforting touch. It was a check. He was checking if I was incapacitated. "Hang in there, sweetheart," he said, the line he had rehearsed. "I'll take you to the hospital." "Please," I groaned. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you to the car." He pulled me up. I leaned heavily on him. I made my legs dead weight. I wanted him to struggle. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he was doing. He dragged me to the garage. He opened the passenger door of the car. He shoved me in. He didn't buckle my seatbelt. Why would he? He didn't care if I was safe. He got in the driver's seat. He hit the garage door opener. As we backed out of the driveway, I looked at our house. The kitchen light was still on. The plates were still on the table, half-eaten. He thought he was driving me to my death, but he was driving me to his execution. I closed my eyes and let my head loll against the window. I listened to the hum of the engine. "Hurry," I whispered. "I am," he said. His voice was calm. "Just rest, Emma. Close your eyes. It will be over soon." He had no idea how right he was. The drive to the woods was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I kept my eyes closed, pretending to be fading in and out of consciousness. I felt the car turn off the highway. I felt the smooth asphalt turn into rough gravel. The car bounced and swayed. When he stopped the car and told me to get out, when he told me I had 30 minutes to live, I played my part. I stumbled out. I looked terrified. I watched him drive away. But as soon as his taillights disappeared around the bend, I stopped acting. I stood up straight. The dizziness vanished. The weakness was gone. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the burner phone. It was 7:58 p.m. I dialed 911. "Emergency," the operator said. "My name is Emma Reynolds," I said. My voice was clear and steady. "I am on the old logging road off Route 9, about 2 miles past the bridge. My husband just abandoned me here. He told me he poisoned me." "Ma'am, are you safe?" "I am safe for now," I said. "But he is coming back. He thinks I'm going to die here. I need police and an ambulance immediately. I have evidence." "We are dispatching units now. Stay on the line." "I can't," I said. "I need to hide. Just get here." I hung up. Then I texted my sister. "He did it. Police are coming. Meet me at the station." Then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. Mark wasn't just going to leave me there. He needed to find me. He needed to be the one to call the police. It looked better for him if he was the frantic husband who realized his wife was missing and retraced his steps. 10 minutes later, I saw headlights. They were coming from the direction of the highway. But they weren't police lights. It was his car. He was coming back to check. He wanted to make sure I was dead before he made the call. He pulled up to the spot where he had dropped me. He left the engine running. The headlights cut through the dark woods. I stepped out from behind a large oak tree. I walked right into the beam of light. I stood there, arms crossed, staring at the windshield. He gasped. I saw him jump in his seat. He expected a corpse. He expected a woman writhing on the ground in agony. He didn't expect his wife standing tall, looking him in the eye. He opened the door and stumbled out. "Emma," he stammered. I came back. I got worried. He was trying to pivot. He was trying to switch back to the good husband role. But he was confused. Why wasn't I dead? The digitalis should have stopped my heart by now. "Stop acting, Mark," I said. My voice was loud in the quiet night. "Emma, what are you talking about? Get in the car, we need to get you to a doctor." He took a step toward me. "I didn't eat the poison," I said. He froze. "I swapped it," I said. "I swapped your little bag of powder for aspirin 3 days ago, and I swapped the plates tonight, just in case. You didn't feed me anything but sugar and pasta." His face went pale. The mask fell off. The concern vanished, replaced by pure, cold hate. "You beach," he hissed. He looked around. We were alone, or so he thought. He reached into his pocket. I knew he carried a pocket knife. "You think you're smart?" he said, stepping closer. "It doesn't matter. No one is here. I can still finish this." He was going to kill me with his hands. The poison had failed, so he was going to use force. I didn't back away. I didn't run. You're right, I said. I am smart. I pointed behind him. Red and blue lights exploded in the darkness. They had come from the other direction, down the logging road, cutting off his escape. They had been driving with their lights off, guided by the GPS signal of my phone. Sirens wailed, shattering the silence. Police, drop it, get on the ground. Officers swarmed out of the trees. They had parked further down and hiked up while we were talking. They had heard everything. Mark spun around. He looked at the cops. He looked at me. He looked at his car. For a second, I thought he was going to run, but Mark was a coward. He was a man who used poison because he was afraid of a fight. He dropped his hands. He fell to his knees in the dirt. 2 officers grabbed him. They slammed him face down into the gravel. I heard the click of handcuffs. I walked over. I stood over him. He looked up at me, his face pressed into the dirt. There was gravel stuck to his cheek. Why? He wheezed. Because I'm not a toaster you can throw away, I said. I'm your wife. And I know everything. An officer approached me. Mrs. Reynolds, are you okay? I looked at Mark one last time as they dragged him toward the squad car. I am now, I said. The next few months were a blur of lawyers, depositions, and paperwork. But it was a good kind of blur. It was the work of cleaning up a mess. The trial was short. Mark tried to plead not guilty, but the evidence was overwhelming. I had the binder, I had the search history, I had the burner phone. I had the audio recording of him in the kitchen saying, I made it spicy, right before he poisoned me. I had the recording of him on the road calling me a beach and threatening to finish this. My lawyer, Sarah, was brilliant. She laid it all out. She showed the jury the life insurance policy he had tried to cash in. She showed the text to Julia. Julia testified too. She turned on him the moment the handcuffs went on. She claimed she knew nothing about the murder plot. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. I didn't care about her. She was just a pawn. Mark was sentenced to 25 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. I watched him being led out of the courtroom. He looked smaller than I remembered. His expensive suit didn't fit him anymore. He looked old. He didn't look at me. I walked out of the courthouse and into the sunlight. My sister was waiting for me. She hugged me tight. It's over, she said. Yes, I said. It is. I went back to the house. Some people told me I should sell it. They said it had too many bad memories. They said it was haunted by what happened. But I refused. I built this house. I sanded the floors. I painted the walls. I planted the garden. Why should I leave? He was the one who broke the vows. He was the one who left. I kept the house, but I changed it. I painted the kitchen yellow, the color I had always wanted, but he said was too bright. I dug up the foxgloves in the backyard and burned them. I planted sunflowers instead. Big, tall, happy sunflowers that faced the light. I sat in the living room one evening, about a year after the arrest. It was quiet. For a long time, silence used to scare me. Silence used to mean he was plotting. Silence used to mean I was alone. But now the silence felt different. It felt clean. It felt peaceful. I had my tea. I had a book. I had my dog, a rescue golden retriever named Barnaby who snored softly on the rug. I looked at my hand. The ring was gone. The pale strip of skin where it used to be had tanned over. You couldn't even tell I had ever been married. People ask me if I'm angry. They expect me to be bitter. They expect me to hate all men. I tell them no. Anger is exhausting. Anger is loud. I lived with loud, silent chaos for too long. I don't feel anger toward Mark. I feel pity. He had a good life. He had a woman who loved him. He had a home. But he was so greedy, so empty, that he threw it all away for money and a fantasy. He thought he gave me 30 minutes to live. I used 12 years of knowledge to bury him. I didn't die on that dirt road. I was reborn there. I stood up and walked to the back door. I opened it and stepped out onto the porch. The night air was cool. I could smell the earth and the sunflowers. I wasn't Emma the victim. I wasn't Emma the wife. I was just Emma. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. I took a sip of my tea, looked up at the moon, and smiled. He never knew who he was dealing with.